Talks, the place where ancient knowing meets bold awakening. I'm your host, Saima, and joining us today is our amazing Daphne Michaels, a human potential expert, psychotherapist, best-selling author, and visionary founder of the SHB Movement for Ultra Conscious Living. She's here to take us into the unseen, into our energy anatomy, our deeper self awareness, and how to cross the threshold into the life we actually meant to live. So, Daphne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Seema.
You're warmly welcome. It's my pleasure to have you here. So, Daphne, you speak about, escaping ego's grabs. So, through understanding our energy anatomy, so I'm really curious to know that what does that actually look like in real life?
I'm so glad that we're talking about this. I have been teaching this work for over 25 years, and it is just now that these concepts are becoming mainstream, and people all over the world are interested in understanding how to escape ego's grasp and how to live energetically. So let me just say it in a really simple way. Our ego is the part of us that reacts to things in the ways that we wish we didn't. So it is our defense structure. And it was created when we were about 7 years old. From birth to seven, we learned all these ways to cope in life, but none of them are very mature. So that is where our ego is stuck. So when we go out into the world and something frustrates us and um, we act in a way that doesn't really represent who we really want to be, or we get into some kind of drama or crisis or something that just brings the worst out in us, and we don't feel good about our life, that is our ego taking over. So if we want to live the life that we have available to us, if we want to live a life that reflects the deepest desires of our soul, we have to escape ego's grasp and learn how to live on a higher vibration. And that's where energetic anatomy comes in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for painting such a vivid and accessible picture of what that like actually meant in practice. It's one thing to talk about concepts like the ego or energy anatomy in theory, but the way you just described it makes it feel so much more tangible and relevant to everyday life, I must say.
Thank you so much. I think that's what we need to do now. I think that's exactly what we need because so many people think these concepts are beyond them. People think, oh, the ego, that belongs in the realm of psychology or energetic anatomy, that belongs with the spiritual gurus. But it's not true. These are concepts that every single one of us need to live and develop and become aware of if we are going to live our best life in today's world.
Absolutely, that makes so much sense, Daphne. So is the ego always an enemy, or is there a healthy relationship we can form?
The ego is actually not the enemy at all. The ego is it is the part of us that is going to automatically respond if it thinks we are in danger. And we need that because sometimes in life we are in danger. So if we're in a stressful situation and we just have to react really quickly, then the ego is automatically going to take over because at the end of the day, the ego's job is to protect the spirit. It's trying to protect us, but it's too defensive.
Mm-hmm. That That's remarkable, I must say. And that's such a powerful reframe, like seeing the ego not as something to fight, but as a protector of the spirit. And I think that perspective invites a lot more compassion and balance into the inner work of so many of us.
Yeah, and when we begin to develop our energetic anatomy, we develop our consciousness. So what does energetic anatomy mean? It means the actual anatomy of our spirit. And when we look at the anatomy of our spirit, we're looking at different aspects of who we're meant to be. For instance, we're meant to feel secure. That is an aspect of our energy. We're meant to feel creative. We're meant to feel empowered. We're meant to live with an open heart. We're meant to live with a sense of choice. We're meant to live with clarity. We're meant to live with elevation. All of these are waiting for us. And once we understand that we can develop these other aspects of who we are, something else happens. What happens is that we also begin to develop our witness. Our witness is a part of us that is able to see if we are operating out of ego, if we are operating from our spirit, because these are two different operating systems inside us. When we are able to see that, we can have compassion for our ego. We can say, oh, you did not need to respond that way. It's kind of like having a 7-year-old trying to defend us in the world. So if we have a 7-year-old um, niece or nephew or son or daughter, and we take them out and we expect them to take care of us in the world, that's what we're doing with our own ego. I think when we have those experiences with young kids doing something that is probably not appropriate, and at the same time, they're doing their best, we have compassion for them. We say, honey, you don't have to do that. You're safe with me. I'll take care of it. And that's the exact relationship we can have with our ego.
Mm-hmm. That's such a refreshing take, Daphne. I mean, it's not about ego elimination, it's about ego integration, right?
Absolutely. It is about ego integration. And that is what people go to therapy for. That is what people do all sorts of internal work for. But we don't have to get it through a therapist's office. I mean, we can, there's nothing wrong with that. But each one of us is empowered because it's our birthright to develop our spirit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you guide people toward elevated awareness. So, can you share that how can someone, begin to access that higher state of consciousness in their daily life?
Accessing a higher state of consciousness in daily life, first of all, requires that we find a safe environment. This is an environment where maybe it's our home, maybe it's going to the library, maybe it's going to the river, maybe it's out in nature, maybe it's with loved ones, but it's an environment outside of ourselves that we feel safe in. When we feel safe in an environment, our ego relaxes and we are able to start shining. Our light starts coming through. So the first step to living an elevated life is to develop our connection to that light inside us, that beauty, that love inside us, and then we can begin to strengthen our ability to hold on to these states of higher consciousness in daily life.
Mm-hmm. I, I love that you bring it back to the simplicity of creating a space environment, whether that's stepping into the quiet of a library or being, held by the stillness of nature, as you said. And it really reminds us that elevated awareness isn't something far away or, only available in spiritual retreats. It's something we can gently invite into our daily lives. And that's such a comforting and empowering reminder. And you made that feel so reachable.
It's the part of us where we feel like we're connected to ourself again. And we each get there in different ways. And the problem is we don't get there often enough and we don't make it a point to get there. We let the problems of the world and the problems of our life take over. When we understand that the energy available to us that is potential, because when we're tapping into higher states of consciousness, we're tapping into potential. When we understand that there's more potential than there are problems, we begin to shift our awareness and say, I know I have problems. Let me tap into this higher potential to solve my problems.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, what's one practical practice that, anchors you when you feel pulled into old patterns?
I call it recalibration. If I am in the middle of a problem and my ego has already engaged, then I need to back away from that problem and settle down and get back into a safe space, either within myself or in my environment, so my ego can settle down and I can recalibrate my energy to a higher vibration. And there's always something in our environment or in our mind that is a higher vibration that we can calibrate to. For instance, we can also use a memory. So if we're not in a place that we can easily access this safe environment, we can always use a memory of when we did feel that way. So if we felt that way in the morning, when we do a daily practice to bring our spirit forward, which is a really great practice, by the way. So in the morning, spend 10, 15 minutes, bring your spirit forward, bring yourself to a higher vibration connected to the universe, connected to potential. And do that through maybe watching the sunrise or being in a quiet space, getting back in tune with who you're really meant to be. Now, if this doesn't hold during the day, just come back to the memory of when you did it. Pull yourself away from the ego. Pull yourself away from the problem. Sit again and recalibrate to that memory of when you felt empowered, when you felt safe, when you felt secure, when you felt elevated. Bring the memory back, and you will bring back the organization of your psyche, of your energy, and you will have shifted from ego to spirit.
Mm-hmm. Recalibration. That's such a powerful word. I mean, that kind of language invites us into so much compassion into the process. I feel that it's not about perfection or never getting triggered. It's about like having the awareness and the tools to come back to alignment. And I really appreciate that how you have named that as a practice. It makes the inner journey feel more spacious, more forgiving, and ultimately more sustainable.
Thank you for that. And I teach this in my work. And when I have people that I'm working with, we recalibrate several times an hour, right? Because the ego is going to try to grab back. So if I'm working with somebody and they're working with a problem, their ego is going to continue to spark, like, let's do it this way. Let's just get afraid and run, or let's fight, or let's freeze. And so we recalibrate and recalibrate and recalibrate. It becomes a practice. And in addition to that, I teach people to every time they walk through a doorway, just take a moment before they walk through a doorway, whether it's from one room to the other, or walking into a building, or walking in to see somebody. Take a moment as you're walking through the threshold to recalibrate to your higher vibration.
Mm-hmm. That's noteworthy. Now, you mentioned crossing a threshold into a new era of potential. So, I'm really eager to know that what is that threshold and how do we know that we are standing at it?
The threshold into our own potential, is that the question?
I'd love to repeat. Like, you mentioned, right, that crossing a threshold into a new era of potential. So, what is that threshold? And, how do we know that we are standing at it, at that threshold?
Aha! So a new age of potential. Is that right? Okay,
Yes.
fantastic. I absolutely believe this because I have been on this journey for many decades and I've been teaching energetics and how to live in alignment with our higher self, our highest potential for over 25 years. And what I understand very clearly in myself and in the world is that we're going to go one or two ways as individuals. The world is so complicated, so stressful, so scary, and so intent on dividing us as people that we are either going to fall into the path of the ego as the only path we know, or we're going to enter a new age where our spirit is leading the way. And for those of us who make that commitment to allow our spirit to lead our way forward, we are entering into more potential than we have ever had access to. And the reason for this is because there's this thing in psychology, and basically it says when we are under stress, we actually have the potential to make a breakthrough to a higher level of living. This is when people make changes in their life. If they're under a lot of stress, they have a breakthrough, they take their life to a higher level. We are doing this collectively with all of us who are showing up and saying, I want to live at my highest potential. I want to live in alignment. I want to bring the beauty out in life. I want to reach unity consciousness where I no longer feel separated and angry and like there's a polarization, good people, bad people. I want to live free of that drama and come into a state of being that feels right and feels like our birthright. That is the new age of potential that we're stepping into. And as more of us decide to walk this walk as individuals, we're going to connect with each other, just like you and I are doing today from across the world. And it's going to just build, and we're going to come up with solutions together because we're
Mm-hmm.
connected.
Mm-hmm. That's such a profound way to describe it, Daphne. I mean, like what you have shared brings so much clarity to that moment. And I mean, I think a lot of people will hear your words and, recognize that they are, in fact, already standing at that age. You have just given language to something they have been feeling but couldn't quite name that. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. This is where the mystery comes in, right? There's a mystery, call it the universe, call it, whatever beyond us, that is there's a bigger master plan for those of us who choose to rise and become part of the solution in our own way. It just seems that we all are all resonating. And, that's what happens when we live energetically. We begin to resonate with like minded people. And it's such an exciting time for this level of resonance to be reverberating across the world.
Absolutely, that makes so much of sense. Now, you teach that your I am is a personal compass. So, what does that mean for someone, feeling directionless right now?
Our I am is another way to say this. This is a really interesting thing. So, so there's this thing in energetic work called the assemblage point. And the assemblage point is the point of our I am, the point of our identification that organizes how we see the world. So, if our assemblage point is organized in relation to our ego, we're going to see everything terrible. We're going to see everything stressful. We're going to see all the reasons to be afraid because that is how our psyche is organized. It's organized to see, that's our lens. When we shift our I am, we're shifting our assemblage point to open a new lens. And when we open a new lens, it's kind of like a kaleidoscope. We're actually shifting our lens. That is our I am. When we shift our lens, our entire being sees opportunities. Our entire being now sees beauty. We see connection. We see our own strength and our own empowerment and our own spirit. And we begin to understand that we have a choice, that we can position our I am to ego. We can position our I am to spirit. And when we position our I am to spirit, our life opens up and becomes magical. And that is
Hmm.
why our I am is our personal compass.
Oh, that's such a beautiful reminder, Daphne, again, that even when everything outside of us feels unclear or uncertain, we can return to that inner I am as a steady point of truth. And for anyone feeling lost or untethered right now, I'm sure that's such a powerful invitation not to rush for answers, but to remember who they are at the deepest level. And you have offered that kind of clarity and encouragement.
Absolutely. And for people that are feeling lost, it is really helpful to actually start writing their I am. So, getting up in the morning and just doing automatic writing. Who I really am, who I really want to be, who I really remember who I was. For people who have lost parts of themselves through this writing process, they can say, I remember when I was a joyful child. I remember when I used to love people. I remember when I used to trust people. I remember when I used to feel safe. And bring these memories back as your I am. I am lovable. I am kind. I am safe. I can make good choices for myself. I want to live on a higher level. I want to return to alignment with the universe. We have to really work it if we're lost. We have to really get our way back to our true I am. And when we begin to experience it, all of those energy pathways that we talked about earlier pop open. And then we begin to feel it more. And we have to escape ego that shuts us down and pry ourselves back open so that we can actually feel our connection to ourself, our connection to the universe, our connection to one another on a higher level.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful truth. That reminder that the compass is within is the most sacred truth of all.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Daphne, thank you for showing us how to decode our inner landscape and live from our highest frequency. So, listeners, if you have been feeling pulled to something more but couldn't name it, maybe today you did. So it's not about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you already are. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious, and let your soul spark.